Is it playoff or bust for the Ohio State Buckeyes this year? It certainly feels that way with the talent they have coming back, as well as the pressure on Ryan Day. But this coaching staff and this team is ready for that pressure. Today, we take a deep dive into the Ohio State Buckeyes to look at what expectations are and how this team can meet them. Before we do that, though, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share the video. It goes a long way in helping this channel grow. It goes a long way in helping this series thrive. It's been a really fun series, and we have our final two videos coming up here, and the Ohio State Buckeyes are up next. Now, Ryan Day obviously understands the pressure of coaching at Ohio State. He understands what it takes to win, and he understands what fans want. And a national championship run is definitely what this team wants. And really, they want to win the entire thing. And this is a coaching staff that has the right pieces in place to make that happen. Now, Ryan Day did some really good things with his coaching staff. He's brought in Jim Knowles before to fix his defense, and now he brings in Chip Kelly to run his offense. So that's definitely two big names in the coaching world that are really good at what they do on both offense and defense. And it's going to help an offense that was disappointing last year for Ohio State standards, but you're going to have a defense once again that should be one of the best, if not the best, in college football. So you feel really good about the coaching staff you have coming back. You feel good about the play callers that you have. The fact that Ryan Day and Chip Kelly get to collaborate says a lot about what this team should be. And then obviously we'll dive into the talent that's going to run that offense. But you feel pretty good about what this team has coming back on the coaching staff, in addition to what they have coming back on the roster. Now, in the transfer portal, when we look at that, you look at what this team added. It's not your typical transfer portal class when you're looking at certain contenders, but Ohio State recruits so well that they don't need to bring in a ton of players to fix that, because that's really more concerning than anything. But you did obviously bring in a couple of key players at key positions. Obviously, Will Howard is one that everybody knows. He has been recently named the starter for Ohio State, and he is going to obviously play a huge role in the turnaround of this offense. Obviously, last year did not go as planned, but you're looking at an offense that brings a ton of talent back to potentially make this one of the best offenses in college football. You also bring in Julian Sayin from Alabama. That's a very underrated transfer addition. I think that he is going to be really fun to watch down the road, and he's already making some noise from reports that we're hearing out of camp as well. So those were two solid additions at the quarterback position. The big names, though, you're going to look at Caleb Downs and Quinshon Judkins. Now, Caleb Downs entered the transfer portal from Alabama. That wasn't super surprising, but I think that Alabama fans were a little shocked that he was going to leave, and he lands at Ohio State of all places. I think a lot of people thought he was going to Georgia, lands with the Buckeyes, and joined the secondary that was one of the best in college football last year. And he adds a phenomenal talent to that group. Judkins surprised everyone. I don't think there was a single person that expected Judkins to leave Ole Miss. And I don't think anybody really expected Ohio State as one of the top landing spots for him. Now he joins Travion Henderson. We'll obviously dive to that in a little bit, but that's one of the more exciting backfields in college football, arguably the best heading into the year. So that's a really exciting duo for this team. When it comes to departures, there are a couple that it was pretty obvious it was going to happen. Jahad Carter didn't work out like they wanted. Dalen Hayden was just in a crowded running back room, wanted a chance to be the starter as he deserved, and he goes to Colorado. You get Noah Rogers heading the transfer portal, but that's what happens when you recruit the level of wide receiver, the talented wide receiver group that Ohio State does. You're going to see certain guys depart, and that just is what it is. Julian Fleming also wanted to have a bigger role, so he goes to Penn State. Chip Trainum, kind of the same thing. Chip Trainum was a very serviceable running back when Ohio State needed him. He was a good addition for this team, and he filled in when needed, but he obviously also deserves a spot and a shot really to start and get to what he wants to do, which is potentially play in the NFL. So we'll see what he can do at his new school. But so again, you lose some players. Now, I don't think you necessarily feel too bad about the players that depart, like Kyle McCord. Julian Fleming was a solid player for them, but I don't think you're necessarily hurting, especially when you look at the talent they have coming back. So that you feel pretty good about what the transfer portal did to Ohio State's roster. You feel good about where they currently sit, and you feel good about what that means for this team heading into the 2024 season. The offense obviously is going to be under the spotlight. You bring in Chip Kelly to run this offense, an offense that, like I said, was fairly disappointing last year. When you look at the talent they had, it's kind of disappointing to see that some of the numbers that they put up. And you can point fingers all you want at anybody that was on that roster, but it's almost time to flush it. You have a I wouldn't say completely new offense, but you have plenty of skill position talent that's going to be a little bit different than last year. And you also have some returning guys that are looking to take on bigger roles and improve this group. Will Howard is going to be the leader of that group. He wins the starting quarterback job for now, but you know that Devin Brown is going to push him. Julian Sayin is also in that. The quarterback room is crowded. You have a number of players that are going to contribute and play big roles for this team. It's just a matter of who is going to be that consistent player. And so far, we've seen Will Howard be that guy. And it'll be fun to see what he does for this offense long term, how he fits in Chip Kelly's system. I think Chip Kelly's had a number of talented quarterbacks. Will Howard isn't maybe the most talented that he's had, but he has the ability to make this offense a dynamic group. Joining him in the backfield, we talk about before you're looking at one of the best tandems in college football, if not the best. TreVeyon Henderson, when healthy, is one of the most electric players in college football. If you get the football in his hands and you give him even the slightest opening, he is going to take it a long way. He is going to make some explosive plays, and that's huge for Ohio State. Now, keeping him healthy is the number one priority. Finding ways to keep him on the field and get him the football makes this offense better. And we've seen over the past couple of years, if he's not in the lineup, you kind of see this offense take a little bit of a step back. You're kind of looking for depth pieces. And granted, Ohio State's had some solid depth pieces, but also you've struggled with injuries in the running back room. So you're hoping that he can stay healthy for an entire year because TreVeyon Henderson, like I said, is dynamic out of the backfield. He's going to be one of the best running backs in college football. The unfortunate part for him, though, it's a good thing and a bad thing, is that he has another running back in that backfield that is one of the best in college football as well. Quinshon Judkins comes in from Ole Miss after 1,100 yards and 15 touchdowns in 2023. And I think that you're going to see a good combination, especially with Chip Kelly running the show. Chip Kelly knows what to do with multiple backs. And one of the things that's going to help TreVeyon Henderson stay on the field is having Quinshon Judkins on the roster. Finding ways to get him the football, finding ways to get him involved is on Chip Kelly. But I'm excited about the opportunities that both of these backs will be presented. And Quinshon Judkins, I'm hearing this, he's going to be a short term or short yard runner, and he's going to help Ohio State in that role. And I think that no one's really talking about as much how much he can do just as a regular back. If you've looked at his film, if you watched him, he is not just that short yardage back. He's not going to be that red zone back. He is an every down back that can make things happen and make things happen at a high level, at an elite level. And I think that's one thing that's kind of flying under the radar right now. I don't know if it's just like assumed that people are going to see that from him, but I haven't heard a ton of national media talking about what he can do just as an every down back. Yes, TreVeyon Henderson is explosive, but Quinshon Judkins is an absolute stud too. So expect these guys to get equal touches and expect Chip Kelly to find ways to get them involved in many ways as possible. And behind them, you maybe have some depth concerns. James Peoples could be part of that rotation, but you feel pretty good about what you have in the first two guys in Henderson and Judkins. And this is a group that needs to improve running the football. That's one area that they probably want to get better at for sure. And bringing in Chip Kelly is kind of a way to do that. And he is going to have a lot of weapons at his disposal, and that makes this offense really exciting. Now, the wide receiver position is a little bit different story when you lose some of the players that you did coming into the 24 season. Obviously, losing Marvin Harrison Jr. was always going to hurt, but that's not unexpected. In fact, I think a lot of people anticipated his departure to the NFL. Julian Fleming's departure obviously gives you a player that has plenty of experience that moves on. But I think at the same time, with the level of recruiting that Ohio State's done, Ryan Hartline's done a great job of identifying top tier talent, and you just assume that these guys are going to step up and play bigger roles because that's just how things work. Now, Emeka Ibuka is the leader of that group, a guy who is looking to take a bigger step in 2024 and potentially put his name into the 2025 NFL draft. And Emeka Ibuka is going to be a phenomenal talent for Will Howard or whoever is going to win that quarterback job at downfield. You also get Cornell Tate back, a guy who I think a lot of people were really excited about coming into the 2023 season, but he just didn't. I mean, it's been hard in Ohio State's offense to stand out with the number of elite wide receivers you have on campus. But Cornell Tate has good size for the position, has the talent. There's a reason why Ohio State wanted him along with a ton of other schools. So Cornell Tate is someone to keep an eye on to be a potential breakout player. Brandon Inniss is also going to be one of those guys that is in that rotation. And really, Tate and Inniss are trying to keep their roles over phenomenal freshman Jeremiah Smith. Jeremiah Smith is going to be one of those players that we probably talk about at the end of the year as a future superstar for this. I mean, when you talk about the freshman wide receivers this year, you have a number of wide receivers all around college football that are freshmen that could play right away and could play big roles. Jeremiah Smith is just one of those guys. And the fact that Ohio State got him speaks to the level of recruiting that they can consistently produce. They are able to get top tier talent. You've seen it over the last however many years when you look at the Marvin Harrison Jr. You have Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave. I mean, just go back to even just recent memory of those guys. You've seen a different level of wide receiver at Ohio State than maybe some of these other schools that are competing for national championships. And this passing attack, one has to find some chemistry. You have new faces stepping into bigger roles. Emeka Ibuka is trying to be the leader of that group. Jeremiah Smith is new to this program in general, and they are trying to find some chemistry with the quarterbacks. And right now, Will Howard is that guy. So if they find that chemistry, then great. But if it's a rotation between Will Howard, Devin Brown, whoever's going to play that role, that could put a wrinkle in things. But again, there's so much talent that you maybe don't have as many concerns as some other people might have. The tight end position is also one to keep an eye on. G. Scott Jr. gets to play a bigger role in 2024. And I think that he's a really exciting player that maybe hasn't tapped into his potential quite yet. You have some depth behind him, but you don't have a ton of production at the tight end position. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on. You saw a couple players depart from that position. So that's going to be an essential position to keep an eye on there. You have some young talent behind those wide receivers, including Jeremiah Smith. Mylan Graham could be another guy that figures into that rotation as well. So you feel like you have good talent. It's just a matter of who's going to be that guy that steps up and becomes the alpha of that group. Maybe it's Egbuka, maybe it's Tate, maybe it's Innis, and maybe it's Jeremiah Smith. If Jeremiah Smith is as advertised, and right now, so far, what we've seen is that he is doing a lot of exciting things, then Ohio State is in good hands. The other thing that they have to do and have to get better at is winning at the line of scrimmage. And there is no excuse for this group to not be one of the best in college football. There is too much talent on this offensive line, and it's going to be a group that is just as important as everybody else. Yes, you need to find a quarterback to run the show, but you also need an offensive line that's going to give him time to throw, as well as open things up for the running backs. And we just mentioned the two running backs you have are too good to not give space and not give opportunities to showcase their talent. Fortunately for Ohio State, you have plenty of talent returning, but you also have some new faces that might step up into bigger roles. The big one is going to be Seth McLaughlin coming in from Alabama. Now, everybody, when talking about him, is going to reference the snaps and the issues that he's had with the Crimson Tide. Last year, obviously, those were under the spotlight and he was under a lot of scrutiny because of those botched snaps. But we'll see what Chip Kelly can do to get him right in his mind and get this offensive line to the level that Ohio State needs them to be, because again, you are competing for a national championship. You cannot afford some of those mental mistakes. So McLaughlin, I think some people think is a great addition. There's also some people that have questions about his ability to play at a high level for the Buckeyes. So we're definitely going to keep an eye on the center position, but you also have players around him where you can't necessarily just hone in on him and target him because you have on the left side, you have Donovan Jackson and Josh Simmons, two very experienced players who have bright futures. Donovan Jackson, I think, contemplated going to the NFL, but decided to come back. So you have two guys on the left side that feel pretty good. Carson Hinsman could have been the starting center this year, but moves over to guard with McLaughlin coming in. He's also the backup to McLaughlin at center. So that's a good depth piece to have. You have a starter, but you also have someone who can back up the guys that are at other positions. Josh Fryer is also going to be the last one we talked about on the right side at right tackle. Again, you're looking at plenty of talent. There's not really an excuse for this group not to be good. They have plenty of experience, they have plenty of talent. And again, it's not all on them, but they play such a big role in getting this offense to where it needs to be. And it needs to be one of the best in college football. And even just getting into that top 25 is where they've expected to be. And they've been there before. But last year, you obviously take a little bit of a step back because if they can't do that, you're going to have to rely on a defense that should be elite, but you can't rely on them for too long because eventually you're going to play really good teams that are going to be able to score and Ohio State's defense can only hold them for so long. Eventually, you do need your offense to win a national championship. You need your offense to do its part. Now, the defensive line is going to be one of the best in college football. It kind of sounds like a broken record to keep saying that about positions for the Buckeyes, but that's how good this group is. Now, Jack Sawyer has been waiting his turn and giving his coaching staff time to let the guys in front of him go do their thing, go pro. And now he's had a chance to showcase what he can do. And Ohio State's really glad that he stuck around because I think he's set for a big year. Jack Sawyer had 10 tackles for loss, 6.5 sacks last year in his first real year as a contributor for the Ohio State defensive line. And I think that he is just getting started. A very bright future for him. JT Tuimoloau is one of those guys that we've seen flashes of his talent, but can he do that consistently? Can he be a consistent dominant threat for Ohio State? The flashes we've seen tell us yes, but we'll find out how good he can be. Again, part of this is going to be just watching film because the stats aren't going to tell you the whole story. This is an Ohio State defensive line that's going to be extremely disruptive. And sometimes your teammates are going to get to the ball carrier before you, or you're going to have guys that are, you're going to get double teamed, you're going to get chipped. There's going to be plenty of challenges in terms of statistically for these guys, but that speaks to how great this group can be. And Tuimoloau and Jack Sawyer are going to be two of the best defensive ends in college football. And it's going to be really fun to see what they are capable of doing to help this defense. Ty Hamilton and Tyleik Williams are back on the inside. Tyleik Williams probably could have been a second round pick, maybe flirting with first round, but he is someone who has NFL talent and he decided to come back. I think that was a huge return for Ohio State. I think a lot of people were kind of surprised by that, but also very excited about the fact that he is coming back to be very disruptive and be a problem for the teams that they face. This is an Ohio State defense that was very good at everything they did last year, and there's no reason why they can't do the same thing. The depth is where they have maybe more questions, but also in limited time, some of these guys made a major impact. Defensive end is going to be a tough group to in terms of getting on the field because of how many players they have available. Sawyer and Tuimoloau are obviously the starters, but you have a guy like Caden Curry who had 3.5 tackles for loss, Kenyatta Jackson Jr., 2 tackles for loss, Mitchell Melton, 3 tackles for loss. So you have guys that in limited time did some really explosive, really disruptive things, but it's going to be hard to find the field because you have so many good players around you and in front of you. But that's a good thing for Ohio State. Right now, you have them on roster. You don't have to worry about them going to the transfer portal. You just have to find ways to get them on the field and let them do their thing. That's good depth. Even if it's not the most experienced depth, I think that's good depth in terms of talent. And even in limited production, you know that these guys can get the job done. The defensive tackle position might be a little bit of a different story. Hero Canoe could be one of those guys that is part of that rotation. Katie McDonald is another one, but you don't have a ton of experience behind them. Again, with what this group has been able to produce over the last however many years, I trust what Jim Knowles and that staff is doing. So you don't have to really be too concerned, especially with the talent you have in front of them. And that also helps the linebackers behind them, but not that the linebackers need help, because this is also a group that has plenty of talent. And really, it's going to come down to who is going to see the field the most. Sonny Styles and Cody Simon appear to be those two starters right now. CJ Hicks is definitely going to be part of that rotation, definitely going to play a big role as well. Styles comes in at 6'4", 235 pounds. Simon just a little shorter at 6'2", 235. Those are productive players for the Buckeyes returning. And CJ Hicks is a former stud for his high school, the former, I believe, 5-star linebacker, comes back, and he is expected to play a bigger role for Ohio State this year. Part of that rotation, even with Styles and Simon back. Gabe Powers is another name to keep an eye on, but behind them, I don't think there's going to be a ton of players that are going to find their way to the field, simply because you have such good talent in that first 3 or 4 guys. So you're going to obviously want to find depth, but you probably don't feel too concerned with Styles, Simon, and Hicks coming back. And that's really good for the Buckeyes, that you feel like you're in a really good spot. You feel like you have things kind of sorted out. And that's going to help this defense once again. This is a group that, I mean, if you're going to nitpick, I guess you could say that they need to be better stopping the run. But we a group that finished 29th. So it's not like you're saying, oh, well, they were terrible last year. You just, if you're going to find ways to get better, and you know that this coaching staff is going to look at that, what can we do better that's going to get us to another level? Because the offense is going to need some time to figure things out. And some of the pressure is going to go to that defense. And I don't really know if you're going to worry too much about any certain level, especially not the secondary. The secondary returns plenty of talent and also adds an elite player that's going to make them one of the best, if not the best, once again, in college football. Denzel Burke decided not to go pro and came back for another year. He is looking to win a national championship. That is huge for the Buckeyes. That was a huge returnee for them. There's a couple guys, obviously, that we've talked about before that decided to come back. Tyleik Williams, Emeka Egbuka, Trevion Henderson. Those are guys that decided to come back to compete for a national championship. And that's huge for a defense, for a team, I should say, that has high aspirations and a secondary that has plenty of talent. Opposite of him, Davidson Igbinison is going to be targeted probably quite a bit, and it'll be fun to see how he responds to that challenge. I think everyone knows what Denzel Burke is capable of, and teams will still definitely challenge him. But Igbinison is going to be probably targeted a little bit more, maybe not as proven, but still someone who has a bright future, an NFL future for sure. But the reason why you go to Ohio State, you want to go to the NFL, and he gets a chance to showcase his talent. Also, good size, 6'2", 193 pounds. I think he has the right frame for a future NFL cornerback. So keep an eye on him and what he can do. There's a reason why Ohio State was really good last year, and it wasn't just because of Denzel Burke. Jordan Hancock returns at the nickel position, so he's another player that will play a pivotal role for this defense, whether that's near the line of scrimmage, whether that's back deep in coverage or in the slot, wherever they're going to put him, he's going to play a big role. Getting Caleb Downs was probably the biggest addition for this team. I think that's kind of a surprise that Ohio State was able to get him. Everyone kind of anticipated that he was going to go to Georgia. Everyone anticipated he was going to join his former coach, but he changes things up and goes to Ohio State for a secondary, like I said, that's full of elite talent. And Caleb Downs is one of those players that's going to make this team even better. Even with the talent they do have returning, you bring in Caleb Downs, you instantly get better. And that's really exciting for the defense. Joining him is Lathan Ransom, a guy who's been playing for the Buckeyes for a while, a reliable player who understands this system, understands what this defense wants to do, understands what Jim Knowles is calling, what his vision is. So that's another good player to have back. The talent behind them is less proven, but still super, super talented. You have the one that I think is the most interesting is Lorenzo Styles Jr., the former Notre Dame transfer and former wide receiver, is playing defensive back for the Buckeyes. And that's an interesting transition whenever you see someone make a transition to a different role. And obviously, wide receiver to defensive back is one we see all the time. But Lorenzo Styles is definitely a name to keep an eye on, not just to be a contributor for the Buckeyes, but for what he can do in terms of making that transition to defensive back. You have plenty of talent up front in terms of the starters. Well, what are you going to get for depth? And Lorenzo Styles could be one of those guys. We'll see what happens there, but you feel pretty good about that defense as a whole. And when we talk national championship, you have a schedule that's going to give you opportunities to showcase your power, but it also has some, I won't say concerns, but definitely some tough contests in store for this team. The over-under right now is 10.5 wins, and the ceiling to me is 12-0, and realistically, the floor should be 10-2. If things aren't going wrong, I don't really expect Ohio State to fall off the map. They're going to lose to maybe one team for sure that makes sense. And then maybe there's one slip up that it's when you look at what they have, the three games that I'm concerned the most about are Oregon, Penn State, and Michigan. And that shouldn't be a surprise. But when you look at the rest of the schedule, Akron, Western Michigan, and Marshall, that is a 3-0 start. Michigan State, even if they're better, that should be a win as well. Iowa doesn't have the offense to keep up with Ohio State, so they should be 5-0 heading into that trip to Eugene on October 12th. And that's going to be a tough game. We'll see what Oregon looks like at that time. We'll see what Ohio State has sorted out, but we'll see which team looks better. And obviously, they face head to head. And that's a huge contest for the future of both programs in terms of the college football playoff. Then you get 2 weeks to prepare for Nebraska. That should be a win. Then you go to Happy Valley and face Penn State. Now, Penn State is hoping that they are going to be a college football playoff contender. So that could be a tricky game as well. It's on the road, so you just never know. Purdue at home, don't really have concerns about that. Northwestern is going to be interesting to play in Chicago. It's not going to be at their practice field or their temporary stadium. So that's good, but that's going to be a win. Indiana home is going to be a win. And then Michigan. I think Michigan is going to take a step back. And I don't think they necessarily have the talent that they once did. And that's huge for Ohio State. Ohio State is looking to avenge the losses that they've sustained when Jim Harbaugh is running the show over the last few years. Ryan Day is looking to get that win over Michigan, and that puts them in a good spot. So again, 12-0 is probably the most likely out, or should I say the ceiling. The most likely outcome is probably 11-1. It feels right down the middle, but 12-0 is definitely a possibility. You just have a few tough tests. The Oregon and Penn State games, the fact that they're on the road makes it a little bit interesting, but you also have Michigan on the schedule, and that's always going to be a challenge as well. But Ohio State is in good hands. They feel like they're in a good place. They have their goal in their sights, and it's just a matter of sorting certain positions out, getting the offense to take a step forward under Chip Kelly, and getting this team to where they want to be, which is national champions.